força e perseverança. Que aí não precisa falar de dinheiro, você já fez tudo para conseguir o dinheiro. Exatamente.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize for the few minutes of delay. I was having an issue there with the computer. So here we are once again. This is our first meeting in English of this year, 2023. Here we are finally, another year. Hopefully it will be a better year for everyone. And we are responsible for a better year too. So the better we are, the better the year. So let's do our part. So tonight we're going to have Mariana. She's going to read a message for us from Our Daily Bread in a few minutes, and then after that I'll be back to talk to talk to you and everyone, the ones who are online. If there's anyone online, welcome as well. We're going to talk tonight. We're going to start a new chapter on the Gospel according to Spiritism. We're going to talk about love your enemies. Not a very easy topic to talk about. It's not that hard to talk about. It's probably hard to do it. But like all the messages that we talk about here, we have to strive to do our best to practice what we preach and to practice what we learn. So having said that, let's do an initial prayer, and right after that we'll invite Mariana to talk to us a little bit. So if we want to close our eyes, just to focus and to think about the good spirits, think about our dear friend Jesus, and moreover, think about our God, our Creator, the one that gave and gives us the opportunity of being alive. We would like to thank you for the blessings that we've been receiving this year in our entire lives. Without your support, without your love, without the teachings that we have and feel throughout our lives, despite all the difficulties that we have, we know that without you, our lives would be even harder. So here we are tonight to open up our hearts so that we can think about your love, your support, the light that you spread upon us all. Thankful and grateful for the opportunity to learn to love, to learn to live, to learn to be better people. So tonight, dear friends, help us not only understand with our minds and with our spirits, but help us understand with our hearts that this message, it's not only for the world outside of ourselves, but the message is primarily for the world inside of us. May your love and your support be with us, not only today, not only tonight, nor tomorrow, but for always and always. So be it.
So be it.
So, having said that, let's invite Mariana. She's going to read from Our Daily Bread, and she's going to explain to us what's
No, I'm not.
I know.
I'm just reading.
Yeah, what the message title is and so on. So, I'll be right back.
Good evening, everyone. So like Max said, we're reading from the book Our Daily Bread from Chico Xavier by the Spirit of Emmanuel, chapter 149. The title is Believing in Vain. By the gospel, you are saved if you hold firmly to what I proclaim to you. Otherwise, you have believed in vain. And Paul wrote that on his first letter to the Corinthians, and it's 15:2. And Emmanuel says, as with the many flowers that will not reach full bloom in the appropriate season, there are countless souls in the service of faith that do not achieve their own inner illumination after a lifetime of terrestrial struggle, having believed in vain along the path of life. Paul of Tarsus was very explicit when he assured the Corinthians that they would be saved if they held to the gospel. Jesus' revelation is an enormous field, with room for all humankind as far as areas of service are concerned. Many arrive at the word site, but do not go beyond the written word. Taking part is purely intellectual organizations. Some devise theological theories, some contribute to statistics, and others concern themselves with the historical placement of the Lord. It is imperative to realize that every worthwhile task is useful at the proper time, depending on the sentiments of the worker. However, regarding the eternal life that Christianity unfolds before us, it is indispensable that we retain within ourselves the Master's teaching by focusing on applying it. Each student thought to be a living page in the book that Jesus is writing with the evolutionary element of the earth. Disciples should engrave the gospel of their own existence, or they will have to restart the learning experience once again. Since without first setting the light of the lesson within them, they will have believed in vain. This is a very strong reading. And I'm going to have Mac here to read to us and explain a little bit of the gospel according to Spiritism. Thank you very much. Sorry, Mac. We can't help you.
Not back. So as I was saying, thank you, Mariana, for the reading. This is a very 149, right?
Yeah.
This is a very, very interesting message and reading. It is very, very sane. I mean, I said right at the start, right, that it is easy to maybe understand, it is easy maybe to speak about it, but it's hard to practice, right? And the title of the message is Believing in Vain, and I'm just going to say this. By this gospel, I'm going to read it again. By this gospel you are saved if you hold firmly to what I proclaim to you. Otherwise you have believed in vain. What is he saying? He's saying, you will succeed if you do, if you practice. If you don't do it, then you have believed in vain. What is he saying in the end? He's saying, oh, I am a spiritist. And then we go outside and we do everything that's against whatever we are learning. You have believed in vain. You have said that in vain. You have, oh, I believe in Jesus. And then we do stuff that is against the teachings. So it's just, right? It's just the facade. It's just the outside. So believing in vain, it's kind of hard for us not to do sometimes, which is not to discourage us, but it is hard for us to really practice everything. It is really hard, but It is something that we should strive to do if we want to be good in what we are proposing ourselves to do. Everybody likes to go to a doctor and be well treated. Everybody likes to go to a doctor and have a good exam and have the doctor actually say that whatever he or she's gonna prescribe will help us. Everybody likes to go and have a solution to their problems. And that's why is a doctor good in what he or she does? Because he wants to be good at what he does. There's a motivation. What is the motivation? Each one may have a different one, but if they don't do a good job, what's going to happen? It's going to lose clients. A lot of people will talk bad about them, and then they will lose clients, and then they will have less work, and then they will have less money. They won't be able to support themselves. They won't be able to support their family, and so on and so forth. So, why not with our perception of life? Why not with our the way we live, either ethically or religiously, if we want to say so, right? So it's I think it's I tend to, or I try to, at least for myself, to always think about the spiritual life or the moral life or the ethical life as something practical, in the sense that comparing to stuff that we understand, that we have day-to-day to do. So, for example, I work at a place, right? And I don't want to go to work. What will happen if I don't go to work?
You get fired.
Right? So I will get less money. I will, and then I have motivations not to not go. I have motivations to go. And I find motivation. So why don't we find the same type of motivation for our inner improvement? Why is it so hard for us to find motivation in material life than it's hard than on the other life? It's probably because I just don't think about it as much as I think about money, or as I think about...
I think it's because when we are here, and it's material stuff, you can visualize the consequences to your actions. And spiritually, you don't really have that. It's not there for you to see it physically, the consequences.
Or we're not trained
Yeah.
enough to see it, because everybody knows that if I don't study for a test, I will not do well in a test.
Yeah.
And that's material, but at the same time, it's not material. But everything in life, once we do it, we have a consequence. And this is a day-to-day thing. We always, and we know that. There's, a kid that's learning how to walk knows that he or she will fall. And when he is trying to walk, and I'm saying this because my grandson is learning to walk, every time he's going to step, to give one more step, he hesitates, and he's always kind of looking around. And we all saw that, and we all lived that already, right? We had kids, we had people like young kids around us, and we know how that happens. We know that every time we're going to do a step, I'm going to look around and I'm going to try to balance myself. I'm going to try to see if there's some place where I can hold myself so I don't fall. It's already in my brain, it's already in my body, that every step that I have to learn how to balance myself. Our mental life is the same way. Our spiritual life is the same way. But for whatever reason, we dissociate these two things, And we don't interconnect those two things as if they are two completely different things. But actually they are not. And maybe that's why, one of the reasons why we try, or some of us try or go to a church, to a temple, to a spiritist center, is to maybe to be reminded of this more often, so that we can have that more like ready for us to perceive, to notice stuff in our lives, so that we can help ourselves on finding motivation to not allow life to, say, leave us behind. Not allow lives, or not allow ourselves to not go to work. To find motivation to go to work and to get that reward in the end. And the reward in the spirit, in terms of the spiritual life, is not necessarily money-wise. We can compare it to a reward, but it's an inner reward. And we can also see that, for example, when we have a son, a daughter, a friend, our father, our mother, someone that we helped with something. It doesn't need to be physical. It can be a teaching, it can be a saying, it can be a word, it can be something you did, and then all of a sudden you see the other person realizing that what you said helped her, and it may, or helped him, and it makes sense, and then all of a sudden you have that reward inside of yourself. Oh, that thing helped someone. And that reward comes, and you probably have that feeling already. You felt that already. And we know that that's one of the best rewards that we can have, is to see someone succeed with something that I did, or as me being an example. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, that's good, so that works, and that's we should, at least, we strive to do that more and more. Not easy, but that's something that we should take from our material life to our spiritual life. We say that a few times. Heard a few people saying that a few times. Oh, it's going to snow. It's going to snow tomorrow, or it's going to fall. The world, the sky is going to fall tomorrow. Are we going to work? Yes, we're going to work. It doesn't matter. Oh, but are we going to church? No. Oh, wait. Right? So it's that type of thing that I'm talking about. Is what is really important. What is really important, and it's our decision. It's not a criticism or not. It's our decision. There are moments when it can be dangerous, and that's okay. There's no problem, zero problem. But if I'm going, even with danger, if I'm going somewhere, and why won't I go to this other one? It means that this one is more important than this one. To what degree it's more important? And so that's the things I'm talking about. And I'm remembering this because, of course, we're in the snow season now, and at any time, right, the sky might fall in white on us. So, right, that happened in Buffalo. 4 feet of snow, 6 feet of snow, and people died. So that's the type of thing that, of course, we have to be careful. But it's not like normal. Nothing like that happens all the time. But this was a segue because of Mariana's message, or our daily bread message, Mariana's reading, and. But tonight we're going to talk about the ones who are online and seeing the book right here. But for you, this is the Gospel according to Spiritism, and tonight we're starting chapter 12. And chapter 12 is love your enemies. Love your enemies, and we're going to talk a little bit about items from 1 to 4, and as I usually say here, I don't read the whole thing to everyone. I don't talk about everything that's here because, it's kind of hard to really talk about all the topics that, sometimes these texts cover. So I always recommend people to read the text when they are back home, to study it a little bit more, to think about it. Because here it's just like small, like brush strokes, right? Brush strokes so that we have a basic idea, or sometimes not a so basic idea, but a basic idea of the topic. And in these items, what Kardec does, which he does very frequently in these chapters, he takes passages from the Gospel, and then he makes comments based on those topics on what he wants to talk about. And these two items that he grabs from the Gospels is from Matthew, and the other one is from Luke. Both of them he takes from that part of the Gospel that is the Sermon on the Mount. So he grabs on the Mount. He grabs a few items or a few verses from two pieces, one from Mark and one from Luke, and then he talks about it. So the name that Kardec gives to these items is render good for evil. So it's, if you're receiving something evil from someone, instead of giving back something evil, give something good instead. So that's the title, render good for evil. Like, don't do the same as you received, do it differently. And these are the parts that I'm going to read. I'm going to read the passage from Mark, from Luke, from Matthew, and the passage from Luke. And then we're going to talk about what Kardec said. And I'm not going to read it like in a row. I'm going to stop and make some comments. But here is what Jesus says, or Matthew wrote of what Jesus was saying. You have learned that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemies. That's Jesus saying to people like us when we were watching him on the Mount. You learned that it was said. So he's saying to us that those people, us, have already learned that someone had said that we should love our neighbor and hate our enemies. That's what he's saying. He's saying that people around were hearing from someone and have already learned that we should love our neighbors and hate our enemies. I have to stop right here. And I'm going to open a big parenthesis. And I have said this already here, but apparently I like to repeat myself, so I'm going to repeat myself anyways. I don't know if you have ever opened a Bible. So if you open a Bible, especially, and I'm going to talk about the New Testament. So you open the New Testament. What happens is Matthew, or whatever, one of these four apostles, the evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who wrote what Jesus' life was. The people who wrote, grabbed these teachings and translated them. They organize the Bible in a way that I find to be very interesting. I wouldn't say all the Bibles, but a lot of the Bibles, when it's Jesus that's saying something, they either italicize the letters so you know based on the letters that it's not what Mark is writing. For example, here it's all Jesus saying, but sometimes Mark or Luke will say, and Jesus said. This is not what Jesus said, right? This is the narrator saying Jesus is going to talk. Then after that, whatever Jesus says, it's in italics. Some Bibles put it in red or put it in a different color, so it's very visual, so you can really see what Jesus was talking about. A lot of some of what Jesus said, and we quote and we say that Jesus taught us, is not his idea at the moment. It's not his own creation. Sometimes what he is saying, it was already said before. So he is as if I'm here and it said, oh, Mariana just said that. And then I repeat what Mariana said. So sometimes what Jesus is doing is he says, love your neighbors. The people who organized the Bible went to the Old Testament and found in the Old Testament those same sayings. And then they point where you can find it. So a lot of times you are reading the Bible and you find like a subscript, like a letter A or B or C or D. And in the bottom of the page, there's another verse that says Deuteronomy or Jeremiah or Isaiah. And then it has the chapter and the verse number. And you go back there and you will find exactly the same thing that Jesus is saying. So what is he doing? Jesus is a Jew. Jesus studied everything that had come before him. So he knows what the other prophets had taught. So sometimes he's quoting. He is saying what another person said. And he is, by doing this, what is he saying? He's saying, you already know this, or you should know this already. But you haven't been practicing. So let's start by doing whatever you already know, or you should know. Here he does it a little different, because he says, you have learned that it was said. So he's actually saying that whatever he's going to say next, somebody had said before him. And what was it? You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemies. So Jesus is saying that someone told everybody to love your neighbor and hate your enemies. But you know what's funny about this text? Actually, this text is not in the Bible. It's an incarnate spirit, Mariana. It's not a dead spirit.
Just be scared.
I was just Christiana, yeah. She got really scared.
I wasn't expecting that.
So what is interesting about this text, this sentence that Jesus says, is that he says that it was said already, but it's not in the Old Testament. No one ever said that. But he says it here. That it was said. So someone must have been teaching this around. And he is aware of everybody that's teaching stuff around. There's a lot to think about this, but the point that I want to make here is in 1948, it's about 7 years ago, more or less, a little bit more. Some manuscripts were found in Egypt. At the Dead Sea, and it's called the Dead Sea Scrolls. In those manuscripts, there were some texts where actually This sentence was found, or something similar to this, that you should love your neighbor, but you should hate the enemies of light. And it was the first time, or I would say the first time, but it was the time when they realized that Jesus was actually really paying attention to all the sects and all the teachings that were surrounding them. And he was using whatever he could in the day-to-day life to teach the others. So that brings me to that idea that once I start living and with purpose, and I start observing the world, I have to be aware that every moment that I'm living, I can learn from it. I can learn something for the good or for the bad. And that I can use that teaching moment to improve myself and to get better. That's the one of the parentheses that I'd like to make with this. I can talk a little more about this. I mean, if you were interested in this piece, but let's go back to the topic here. He says, and I'm going to read it again, so this needs to be very clear for all of us. You have learned that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemies." But I say to you, love your enemies. So he is inverting this completely. He's turning this completely on the other side.
Jesus?
Yeah. He is saying that's not what you should do. You heard that you should love your neighbor and hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who persecute and malign you, so that you may be children of your Father who is in heaven, who makes the sun rise on the good and on the evil, and the rain fall on the just and the unjust. For, and then he asks a question, if you love only those who love you, what reward will you receive from it? Do not the publicans also do that? And the publicans were a group of people that were very badly seen. People would look at a publican and would think bad things about them. That they were bad people, let's say. Oh, that group of people is a bad people. Let's imagine a group of people that killed, for example. Oh, those people are terrible. But among those people that killed someone, don't they love someone? They do love someone. And someone loved them as well. Their mothers and their father, not necessarily that, but that's what Jesus is asking, right? Do not the publicans also do that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing that others do not? Do not the publicans do the same? I say to you, if your justice is not more abundant than that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So, to me, this is a very, I don't know, to me, it is very easy to understand. Very easy to put into words, very easy to comprehend the idea behind it. If you have any type of moral compass, of an idea of improving the world, of making the world a better place to live, we will find out very easily that if someone doesn't like me, and think that I'm a bad person for whatever reason, and I don't see that the same way that the person does, and I imagine that if that person hates me and wants to get rid of me, how can the world improve if I do the same? If everyone that I don't like, if everyone that I don't agree with, if everyone that I tend to hate, if I want to eliminate from the world, what stops a person that thinks the same about me to eliminate me?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? So to me, it is very easy to understand. It is very easy to understand. However, from the point of view of practicing this, from not doing this, then it's a completely different thing. Because once we get, let's say, enraged, angry about something that someone did, and if we don't have self-control, how many bad things can I end up doing towards the other person, towards that situation, that can lead me to destroy not only the other person's lives, but also my personal life? Because sometimes of one act, of one word, of one thing that I said or that I did, that will affect the rest of my life. How many people do not regret having said or having done something early on in their lives, and that bothers them until like they are old and dying and having to ask for forgiveness in their deathbed because of something that they did? And what about those that never even had the chance to do that? How many stories within families? I know a few, not a lot, but I know like a couple or one or two stories of people that, fought when they were very young, and then they carried that anger for the rest of their lives. And then one of them died when they were very young still. And then they carry the blame, they carry that that resentment, they carry apologize. They carry that bad feeling within themselves because the other person died, and there's nothing that you can do anymore because the other person is not there yet anymore. And we carry that, and because of one error, because of apparently one small thing that we just couldn't get over with, and then all of a sudden the other person is not there anymore. How many times haven't we heard stories or people when they talk about forgiveness and say, hey, and Jesus himself, he says it in a few different places, take care of business while you're with the person, because maybe the person will die, or maybe you will die, and then there's no way to solve the problem anymore. And then we're going to carry that blame or that guilt for... So, this is one of the topics, or one of the ideas about what Jesus is saying here, right? Is what, and this is very, like I said, I mean, to me at least, maybe to you as well, the ones who are online, for you guys who are here, maybe it is easy to understand, intellectually, think about this and understand it. But the problem lies in how much do we practice not to put towards the others hate? How much do we practice this? And how much do we actually do the opposite? How much do we actually let it out, the hate for other people, the hate for other groups? The hate for, how much do we let it out? And especially in these days. I'm not going to say that it is different. And people tend to say, oh, it was better when it was in the past. No, to me it was never better. This is the best time that we have ever lived. There's no other time that's better than this time. No other time. Zero times. Because if we believe that, then there was no better time when we were not here on earth. Zero. Because if we go back 30 years, people that were 30 years younger, our parents, what would they say? That the years that were better were when they were 30. Then we go back 30 and we ask their parents, which ones were the best years? 30 years before, right? So there's no way that that's true. It's zero possibility. Zero possibility. We don't need to go that far. Yesterday I was watching a series about this football player, and he's a black guy, and he's talking about how hard it was for him growing up in a white society. He's young. He's 30. He's young, or 40 years old. Not even 40. So it's the other day. It's the other day actually. It's actually like 20 years ago. I'm not talking about 50, 100 years ago. We're talking about 30 years ago. That he is in a hotel lobby with his parents, and he's adopted. But he is black and his parents are white. People stop and ask if the black kid is bothering the white people. Bothering his parents. People in the hotel are, the woman, the receptionist, asks the parents, and of course she doesn't know it, but it says a lot about how we treat other people. Because he is black and he's right there, she comes from the back and poke him like, "Hey, young man, what are you doing here?" It is appalling. It's something that it makes. That's 20 years ago. It was not better. The difference now, sometimes we think it's worse, it's because now we know it. Now we know it quickly. We have every information that we want. At the time that it happens, it doesn't matter. It happened, if we are connected, we will know, period. How much time would it take for me to know about a war that's happening in Ukraine 50 years ago? How much time would have to pass for us to know? To see photos, to see images? How much time would it need? Now we know it right away, at that very moment. But there were wars, there were people being killed, there was racism. It still has. We're working on to get better. And we see improvement in lots of different places, with lots of different things. So, when we don't do our part, and if we keep repeating the same patterns, that's what Jesus is talking about. If we give back to the world what the world is giving me, is exactly what he is talking about. You heard what was said. You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemies. Isn't that what we do all the time? Isn't it what we do all the time? With our posts and our comments online? Isn't this what we do all the time? We send hateful thoughts about every little thing that we don't agree with. Instead of trying to raise up the good side. No, we put like more hate and more hate and more hate into everything. What is this going to help? What does this really, what does this hate help? It helps the other side, whatever the other side is, have more hate on their side. Instead of having a little bit of love, even if they don't understand it, it doesn't matter if the other side understands or if it doesn't understand. Because what's coming from me, it stains me. If I get a lot of charcoal, a lot of stuff that's dirty, full of dirt, and I throw at other people, a lot of that dirt will stick to me. So if I'm throwing out hateful thoughts, if I'm throwing out hateful words, if I'm hating other people all the time, what is sticking to me? Is love going to stick to me if I'm full of hate? It's so contradictory. But that's how we act still today. So, Kardec will talk a lot about what love Jesus is talking about here. We tend to focus on the meaning of the word. Oh, how can I love my neighbor? It's a simple thought to me. It's a simple thought. We're not talking about loving our neighbor. It's not talking about love the enemy. It's not about, living with the person. It's not about bringing the person under my wing and give the person the same type of affection that I have for the people that I love. It's not about that. It's about doing at least the minimum. Like Jesus says, when the sun rises for everybody. It doesn't matter who the person is. It doesn't matter what the person did. But we are the ones who are the best, right? So we are the power to choose. And we have the power to hate and to love. And actually we do. But that's how we got into the troubles that we are right now. Because instead of choosing the love side, the light side, we're choosing the dark side. We're choosing the hateful side. And then, if we don't really counterbalance, or put more to the other side, more to the love side, how can we make our lives and the lives that we live better? So, having said all that, and having talked about the way we live today being better than we lived in the past, and also having said in the beginning that it is not easy to actually put some of these teachings in practice, I'd like to think a little bit, and although I have said that we don't need to focus on the words necessarily for this, but it is something that I find really interesting, is that because we don't know, say, the exact words that Jesus said in his language, and depending on the word that we use, sometimes we can go more to one side or to other. So if I say, I love this, or if I say, I adore this, we can have like slight different meanings of what the words are, right? And also, not only the word, but also the tone. When I say, oh, I love you, and then I say, I love you, right? It's two different things, right? It's the same word, the same sentence, but the tone, the way I said it, right? So, when people translate the word love from whatever Jesus said to, and our translations of the Bible come from the Greek language, because the original, whatever, if it was in Hebrew or in Aramaic, probably Hebrew, because Aramaic was more spoken language, they can translate love as three different words with three different meanings.
Really?
Yeah. I won't know the words themselves in Greek, but the meanings are, or the kind of the words or pronunciations are something like this. So, one is the love that's called philia. The other love is the love that's called eros, and the other love is called agape. 3 different types of love, quote unquote, here. The filial love is the love for your brother or sister. It's a brotherly love, a sisterly love. It's the love that's what we tend to call like the friendship love. The eros, of course, it's the more on the sexual side of love. It's the love of 2 people that are involved in their own lives. And then physically, and of course more than physically as well. And the agape, or agape, whatever the pronunciation is, which is the love that's above the other 2. It is almost as if it's a triangle where 2 loves are in the bottom, and then the agape is on top, which is the vertex that connects to God. So it's the love of God. It's the love above all the other loves. So it is as if these 3 make up one love. So when Jesus says love your enemies, he's not talking about necessarily the filial love. Because for the philia, you have to trust the other person. And how can you trust someone that you don't trust? How can you give your life on the hands of a person that you don't trust, that hates you? So he's probably not talking about us giving our lives to that person when they say love your enemies. He's probably not saying, hey, give your sexual life to the other person as well, because so what is he talking about? He's probably talking about that love that is above the others, that you don't need to be physically in contact, but you don't emanate hate towards the other person. You send good thoughts for the other person. You wish good things for the other person, even if the other person is doing bad things to you. Otherwise, how different are you from them? How different am I from the other person? If the other person is giving me bad things, and I give them bad things, what is the difference, really? What is the difference? Is there really any difference? Intellectually, thinking about it, to me, there's no difference. To me, really, there's no difference. It is easy, or is it easy? No, it is not easy, depending on how much we practice this. How easy it is for a kid to learn to ride a bicycle. They will fall, they will cry, they will bleed, they will hurt themselves, but if they stick to it, they will learn. But it will take time. It's not instantaneous. It's not something that you learn the first time. It's not something that you learn the second time, neither the third time. You're going to fall. That's what I told my daughter. I love riding a bike. I used to ride a bike to go to school, to walk, to ride with friends and go places and so on. But I fell a lot of times. I told her times that I fell. I told her times that I felt like Superman. Because the fall was so spectacular that I flew, really. The bicycle stopped almost immediately. And then I flew, and then I fell. And then, of course, my hands, everything was bleeding. And I told her, it's going to fall. You're going to fall, and it's going to hurt, and you're going to cry. And what are you going to do? You're going to stand up, you're going to wash yourself, and you're going to go back and try again. And that's what happened. And it happened right here, outside. And she came to me, and we went to the bathroom, I washed her, and then she went outside and played again. And she learned how to ride a bike. That's how we all do. It doesn't matter if it was me, it doesn't matter. What matters is that's how we do it. So how can I love my enemy? Same way, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to fall. I'm going to bleed. I was... it's like those micro videos that YouTube and all these apps have these days. Like and they posted just a micro one from that movie. The one with the kid that his parents like travel and forget him in the house.
Home Alone?
Home Alone, yeah. So he's outside and he finds that lady that with the birds, with the pigeons.
New York.
And he is outside with her and she is talking, and beginning of course he is afraid of her. But the piece that they show is just that, is she starts talking, then he replies back. So she says, I started to live by myself because I got hurt from the ones that I loved. And then his reply is, it refers to the loss of his parents. Yeah. I hated my brother or something like that, and now I miss them. I know that they hurt me, but I still love them, or something like that, he says. Be it with enemies or with loved ones, that's how it happens, that's how it is. Because we hurt other people sometimes without wanting to hurt them. So why wouldn't it happen with us from other people? And why would this stop me from trying to love more, from trying to send even more love? Because if I don't want hate towards me, why would I want to send hate towards other people? And a good way to train this is watching movies, watching soap operas, watching series. Because there are characters that are developed for us to what?
Hate.
To hate them. And we hate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people say that when they watch something in a TV or in a TV series or in a movie, they say, these guys, these writers, they create these situations that are impossible. This never happens. And then you see something in real life and you say, no one could ever create this thing that's happening. So if we see a situation in a TV series that the character is created for me to hate them, and we start to have that hate inside of ourselves, it's good for us to recognize that hate. We have to recognize that that's inside of us. We have to because the first way, or the only way, maybe not the only, but for me to to improve myself on something is to know that I have that something. If I don't know that I have that something, how am I going to get better? So I recognize that I'm hating, and I say, hey, wait a minute. That feeling, that emotion is coming from inside of me. Why? And then I have to start creating a different thing inside of me, a mechanism, and this is something that I have to try to find within, or try to find a way to say, I can't allow this to happen. Just like what happened yesterday in this series that I was describing to you guys. The receptionist was looking at this boy that was a kid. He was 14 or 15 in this hotel, and I'm going to tell another part. That I already told this one. I'm going to tell another one. So there's this group of they're all in this hotel. I mean, everybody is at that moment is in this hotel for a tournament. Like a high school tournament. It's a baseball or whatever. I don't know if that moment is a baseball tournament or it's a football tournament. But they're all there. And he is sitting. All the others are white. He is a black one. Comes this lady, enters the room, Everybody is making noise or something. She comes to her. He comes to him. She comes to him. And he says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, he says something like, "What do you mean?" And then comes one of his friends and says, "He is playing with us." He said, "What's your room number then?" He says, "I don't know. My parents were doing the check-in. Where's your key then?" He said, "I don't know. My parents have the keys." And then comes his friend and someone and tries to and makes her leave or something. But she leaves like saying, "But next time you'll be out of here." That's 20 years ago. I'm not joking. I mean, of course, this is not a camera that filmed this, right? He is telling his story, and of course, he's telling from his point of view. But we all know how this happened. We all know how this happened. That at that moment, and probably you guys too, you have a feeling inside of you just by me describing this right now, right? Now we know better, or we're in the process of knowing better, that this is unacceptable, right? But what is the feeling that this is in the past? This is in the past, but it affects us still today. What is my feeling now? What do I have inside of me when I hear this? Is it hate? What is it? I have to find out. And I have not to put to the world this feeling. I have to do the other way around. I have to turn this into something good. I have to now, not when I see this, because hopefully we're not going to see this anymore, but do the other way around towards anyone. If the person treats me bad, I will turn around and say, "Good morning." Or say something completely different. How hard it is? Very, very hard. Very, very hard. But we never know how hard is the other person's life. We never know what goes on the other person's mind. What was the education that the other person had? What difficulties the person is living. It's not an excuse to excuse the other in that sense, but it's for us not to suffer more. Because once we engage with hate, we will suffer more. So what Jesus is actually saying to us, so that we can finish, I think we can finish, right? I don't know. Okay. What Jesus is actually saying is, it's not to bring everybody to your side in that sense, although one day we will all be friends, but it is for us not to engage in the hateful side of the world, but actually to engage and to create a better world for everybody by loving more, by spreading more love, by giving more of the good things instead of giving back the bad side. And I finish with this idea that I once heard, which I kind of like it very much, is the idea of, I don't know if you ever played this. I know that not all of you lived near the city or near the beach. And at least in my experience, this happens more near beaches, right? It's when you have like a racket and another racket, and you play ball without a net in the middle. So you just throw the ball to one side, and then the other person throws the ball to one side. Different to you. So you throw to, let's say I would throw to Adriana, she would throw back to me. Different than tennis, right? Tennis, you have the net in the middle. You from this side to the other side. You're trying to make the other person miss the ball, right? That's the goal of the game. You're trying to make the other person miss the ball. On this racket to racket is actually the other way around. You try to throw the ball the best way possible for the other person, so that the other person gets the best ball possible, so that she can give it back to you the best way, so that you can give it back to him the best way, so that the ball is in the air most of the time. That's the goal with our lives. The more tennis is like giving back the worst for the other, so that the other can miss, so I can make the other look bad. Our lives should be, let me give the best to the other, so that when the other gets it, she or he can give me the best that he can have. And then we keep the game flowing. We keep life flowing as best as we can. It is not easy. The ball will fall sometimes. Sometimes you're not going to be able to catch it. But then, just like the bicycle, we raise, we stand up, throw off the dust, and start the game again. And that's how we should all strive to do, at least. And with this, thank you for watching. Thank you guys online, whoever it is there, now and in the future. Thanks for joining us, for showing up once again next month, our second Monday of the month. We'll be back here for another meeting in English. Meanwhile, all the other meetings are following the Gospel according to Spiritism in Portuguese, with Adriana sometimes, with Cristiane sometimes. Well, it's been a while that she has not been speaking to us, but she won't come back at one day.
Long time.
And our friend Luciano, Shirley's, and Mariana is here sometimes.
I don't know.
Jussad is here sometimes. Yeah. So every Monday we're here on at 7, and on Saturdays we're here at 7 too, all in Portuguese, every Saturday from 7 to 8:30. And with this, let's do our final prayer, right, Chris? So that we can all go back home and practice what we've been listening and preaching. Saying, dear God, Jesus, our good spirits, the ones who take care of this place of prayer and of love, we thank you. We thank you for the blessings that were given to us in the shape of words, in the shape of laughter, in the shape of hugs, in the shape of the passes that we received, in the shape of light, of warmth, of caring, of good thoughts, of the good fluids that entered in our bodies. May these feelings of love that we have right now be shared among the ones that we love, towards the ones that we don't love that much. Help us not only understand but feel the need to spread this love through our words, through our thoughts, and most importantly through our hands, our actions, our day-to-day actions. Dear Jesus, bless the ones who are in our minds now, our friends, our relatives, the ones we missed, the ones that are already gone in the spiritual realm. May they all be blessed and embraced, and if possible, may them touch us, may them visit us, and give us comfort, the comfort that you give us by teaching us that this life that we live here, and not, it's just a dust in the eternity that we are, these immortal spirits that will live and live to find and to create happiness. Dear Jesus, may your love fill our hearts, fill our souls, now and ever. So be it. So that's it. Thank you very much, folks. I'm glad that you were here. I hope that I made myself clear. If not, then you can listen to it again online. And maybe someday, right, Chris, like I do sometimes, I go on Saturday and I talk about the same thing here. em português.
Eu vou amar. Você vai tomar café?
Thank you, guys.
Então hoje eu vou ter que começar a amar meus inimigos. Eita, nós. Isso, meu inimigo hoje é o meu sono.